So we finished sewing the 2 lines on our front panels, and these are the wrong sides. So what we need to do next is just pin them together. Now, ultimately in our finished product, this is actually going to be able to open up. So we don't want to sew these 2 pieces together, but while we're creating this backpack, we do want to pin them shut so they don't move. Also, I want to show you that on our light green front panel, the little area where we put our 2 sew lines just fits nicely with the button right in between. So it will look pretty good in the finished product. So let's take our light green piece, front panel on the right side, and overlap it on the dark green front panel on the right side. And it's up to you how you want to line it up. Just make sure it looks good. I tend to line up our sew ends together, and then I'll pin it in place. We're not going to sew these 2 together. And I'll flip it around. Ultimately, you want it to look good to the eye. So if I pin that there, sometimes it helps to stand up, take a look at it, make sure things somewhat look straight to the eye and centered. Fleece is a pretty forgiving fabric, so it will stretch and move. So if it's not perfect, that's okay. But that looks pretty good to me, as far as straight, and things look the way I like them for the front panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin this all the way across, so while I work with this, it won't move on me. When I made, I guess you call it a prototype backpack, my first one, I didn't pin this shut, and my end product, although it did look good, it kind of was a little open. So as I was sewing the front panel onto the rest of the backpack, it tended to open up too much. So that's why I am pinning it across so it will stay in place. All right, so there's our front panel. Just pinned shut because we wanted to open in the final product. And as a last step, we'll put that button in to finish it off. So there's our front panel. It's done. We can put that to the side, and we can start working on the back panel. And this is where it starts to get kind of tricky. And it took me a while to try and figure out, because on the tutorial that I got the pattern from, in my opinion, it's not really explained very well how to do the back panel. So it took me a while to think this process out. So ultimately, the 2 things we have to do is make sure that we have the same shape as the front panel. So we'll make sure we have the same shape. And then we have to make sure that the seam between the light and the dark green continues onto the back panel. So those can be the tricky parts. So the first thing you want to do is bring your front panel back in, and you want to take your dark green and line up the right side of the front panel with the right side of your back. Line them up as best as you can. You want to put the dark green one down first so that the light green is on top of it. That looks pretty good. Flatten it out. Just going to turn it around, make sure everything's lined up. All right, so once again, this is my back panel. Wrong side is out, and it's sitting against my front panel, right side to right side. So now I'm going to bring in my light green and line that up too. With the light green front panel. Okay, so this is ultimately the shape that we want for our back panel because it matches the shape of our front panel. So here's the wrong side of our front panel that we just pinned down. And if I flip it, here's the wrong side of our back panel. So they are ultimately the same shape. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pin these together so I know what shape the back panel needs to be in. I'm going to start from the outside, work my way in. I'm just pinning the back panel, so I'm picking it up and then pinning it away from the front underneath. Sorry, a pin got stuck. There it goes. These pins will eventually come out, so it doesn't have to look perfect. We're just holding it in place for right now. I'm sure there's an easier way to do this, but somehow I couldn't come up with one. My mind couldn't come up with an easier way. So I'm sure that there is an easier way. All right, so when we're done, here is our back panel, the same size that we want for our front panel. So if you pull them off side to side, although the seams and the colors don't quite match where they need to be, it's ultimately the right size. So now that we have the right size, let's find out where we need to put this seam for the light green. Once again, there's probably an easier way to do this. I couldn't come up with one, so I'm sure I discovered the difficult way, but it works. So what I do is I line up the front with the right side up, and I have the back with the wrong side up. And what I do is I kind of line them up with the edge of my table here, down on the bottom. Same size, same size. And I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to line it up with the light green seam here. And I'm going to just start to make a line across my light green. And this line is going to represent where on the back side I need to make my light green seam. So I just kind of extend the line across. Now once again, this is going to be on the back side of your backpack. So it's not as crucial as the front side because people will see the front side more, but it's still nice to have it done nicely. All right, so I just made a line that shows the extended seam from my front to my back. Now here's the weird part. I need to sew this down, but when I sew it, I want to sew it so that I don't see anything but finished product. So I have to take the pins out. And I'm going to sew, leaving my front panel here so I can use that for reference. I'm going to sew, take this off. I'm going to flip this over so that my Right side is faced up. Here's our light green. And I'm going to line this up on the edge of the dark green so that the line that I created here is an extension of the line that's on the front panel. Now once again, they're lined up here on the bottom of my table. All right. So what this means is I'm going to sew with my machine a line right across the line that we just made. So that once I sew that and flip it, we should have something that looks like your back panel. So once again, this is right side to right side. My dark green is below. My light green is on top. I lined up where the seam extends from the front to where the line is on the back. I'm going to pin this in place. Still looks good. I'm going to put another set of pins underneath so that while I'm sewing, things don't move. All right, so I'm going to go to my sewing machine, do a straight stretch stitch, and I'm going to use the dark green. Whenever the two colors meet, I tend to use the darker of the colors. So I'm going to use the dark green and do a straight stretch stitch along this edge. And then once I unfold them, both right sides will be out and we'll have the same shape. And the seam should be somewhat the same. So to our sewing machine. All right, so to the sewing machine, we have a dark green thread in. The settings are the same, but instead of moving my needle position to the left or the right, I've just put it right in the center. Once again, I'm on a stretch straight stitch. I'm going to line it up with the line that we drew and go straight across. I'm not going to pull any pins out because I've made them to the side, so we don't need to pull any out. Don't forget to back stitch. Alright, so there is our stitch all the way across. So let's take out the pins, fold it, and see how it compares to our front panel. Here's the back panel that we just sewed. So hopefully, if you followed the probably rather ridiculous steps I gave you, seems like there should be an easier way. But if I followed them, and hopefully I did this time around, then things line up pretty nice. So we took the pins out. This is our back panel. You fold that seam over, and then you bring it in your front panel, and voila! Yay! So they're approximately the same size, and the light green and the dark green seam is continuous. So success! So our front panel and our back panel, by the way, you can trim this down. You don't need all this excess fabric, which I will do. I'll trim that down. So our front panel and our back panel, they're completed. So now we need to attach the dark green 28 by 3 and the light green 27 by 3, one of each, side panels to go around the front and the back. And what that side panel looks like on the finished, it's this side panel that goes all the way around the backpack that attaches the front and the back. So we will tackle that next. All right, to get started on the side panels of our backpack, you have a strip of dark 28 by 3 and a strip of light green 27 by 3. What you need to do first is flip them so that the wrong sides are out or that the right sides are touching. And what you're going to do on both sides is pin the 3-inch section, line them up as best as possible, and pin the 3-inch sections together. So there's one side. I'm going to go over to the other side. Now the dark green is about 1 inch longer than the light green. That's okay. That's what it's supposed to be. So just bring both of those ends together. I'm going to flip mine over. And line up the edges as best as possible. And pin that together. And then you're going to go to the sewing machine and you're going to sew a straight stretch stitch along this edge that you just pinned. And you're also going to stitch along this end that you just pinned. So both sides will be sewed together. So to the sewing machine. All right, so just do a straight stitch along the 3-inch section. All right, one end is done. Let's go to the other end and do the same thing. And I'm doing about a 5/8 inch seam here. With the the dark green thread. All right, our side panels are attached. So let's show you how to attach them to your backpack. So here's our side panels that we stitched along the 3-inch side. You're going to attach these to the front panel of your backpack. So first thing you need to do is flip your front panel so that the right side is up. Once again, it's pinned. So it doesn't move on us. And you're going to take your side panels and also flip it so that the right side, the correct side of the side panels, the side that doesn't have the tape, is going to lean against or sit on top of the right side of the front panel of the backpack. So right side of the side panels is laying on top of the right side of the front panel of the backpack. Now, really important here is you're going to pin your side panel all the way around the edge of your front of your backpack. But first thing you need to do is line up the color of seams so that when you do sew and you eventually fold this back, your light green seams continue onto your side panel. So make sure that as you're pinning, the seams where the light and dark meet are pinned in the correct place. So pin it on one side, and then what I do is I go to the other side and pin it there also. Line up the light green seam and the dark green seam. Line up the edges. And then pin it in place. Now from here, now that I have my seams lined up, what I do is I pin the top and the bottom so that things are somewhat symmetrical as you pin around. So I'll pin the bottom here. So I'll just kind of eyeball where I think the bottom is. Line up and pin. And then I'll go to the light green side. Find where the centers are. And pin that together. So I have the top, the bottom, and the two sides pinned where the light and the dark green seams are. And I'll just go around and pin all the way around the edges of the backpack, securing the side panels to the front panel. So let me do that. Alright, so we have pinned it all the way around with the seams lining up, and it is as symmetrical as we can get. So we'll go to the sewing machine using a dark green thread. We will sew all the way around the edge, and we'll have the side panel attached to the front. Alright, we've pinned all the way around the side panel and the front panel. Right sides are facing each other or touching each other. So we're sewing on the wrong sides. So here we go. I like to start below where the seam is. So we'll end where that seam is. I'm going to try and keep the edge of the fabric lined up with the edge of my foot. I tend to do a better job sewing that way as far as my eyes have a place to go, so I know if I'm making a straight line or not. So that's probably what, a 1/4 inch inseam. And I am using the dark green thread. And we'll sew all the way around to secure these two together. All right, we went all the way around. Now remember, you are putting essentially a straight piece of fabric around a round piece of fabric, so you're going to have kind of these little kinks. That's okay, because once you flip it the right side, it tends to work out okay. And fleece is, once again, a very forgiving fabric on any mistakes that you have made. So let's head on to the next step. To continue making your Adventure Time backpack, click the link in the lower corner.